Our recent reliability ratings show that Bartholomew County REMC keeps the power on 99.98% of the time. Our customer satisfaction scores rank us among the top performers in the nation, 15 points higher than the national cooperative average. Our commitment to our members is simple: superior reliability at competitive prices and quality service now and in the future. This high level of service requires a fair and equitable investment from each member. Therefore, Bartholomew County REMC periodically evaluates its rates through a cost of service study. Rate design entails a balancing act between meeting our revenue needs while minimizing the overall financial impact to our members. However, as a not-for-profit organization, we must recover our costs of providing power and doing business, while also maintaining a sufficient rate of return to reinvest in our electric distribution system. Through the cost of service study, costs are allocated appropriately to each member classification based on the service, electrical usage, equipment, and other infrastructure required to serve them. In other words, the study gives us an understanding of the full cost required to serve each member classification. Once completed, rate structures are designed so that each class pays their fair share of the costs Bartholomew County REMC incurs for their class. Our most recent cost of service study performed in 2017 resulted in a new rate schedule developed for irrigation pivots. This new rate was approved by the Board of Directors and went into effect April 1, 2018. The irrigation rate consists of 3 billing components which align with our wholesale costs. The goal being, if you can operate and avoid costly peak times, you will save the co-op money and it will be passed on to you. The 3 components are total energy usage for the month measured in kilowatt hours, billed at 6.149 cents per kilowatt hour. Off-peak demand, which is the highest demand of power in a 15-minute duration for the month, measured in kilowatts, billed at $7.84 per kilowatt. And on-peak demand, which is the highest demand of power in a 15-minute duration for the month, during the peak times of 4 to 6 p.m. in June, July, and August, billed at $32.09 per kilowatt, and 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. in December, January, and February, billed at $25.68 per kilowatt. You get an idea of what your demand kilowatt will be by multiplying the running horsepower by 0.746. Let's go through 3 scenarios to better explain these billing factors. If you choose to water and use the pump and pivot in the month of July, but are able to avoid the peak times of 4 to 6 p.m. by shutting off the pump and pivot, you will be billed for the kilowatt-hour usage and an off-peak demand charge for the month based on the highest 15 minutes interval measured in kilowatts. Because you were able to avoid the peak times, you will not have an on-peak demand charge. Let's say that you watered through the peak times in the month of July. You will have the kilowatt-hour usage charges, an off-peak demand charge, and an on-peak demand charge for watering during the off-peak and on-peak times. Remember, you set the demand charge one time per calendar month at the highest kilowatt during a 15-minute interval. So if you water through once, you can water through those peak times throughout the month without further penalty as long as your connected horsepower doesn't change. The third scenario is moving the pivot only and not watering. If you choose to move the pivot during peak times, you will receive an on-peak demand charge based on the kilowatt demand used. This will be a lower kilowatt and kilowatt hour, as the pivot uses less horsepower and energy than the pump and pivot combined. Like the previous scenario, if you move the pivot during the peak time, you can move it as many times as you need to throughout the month without further penalty. Here are some helpful tips to manage the irrigation rate. Irrigators can save money by not running their irrigation systems during peak hours. These times are 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. in June, July, and August, and 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. in December, January, and February. Look at installing timers or other communication devices to shut down systems during on-peak hours. Be aware that your meter is read and demand reset to 0 on the first of the calendar month. Your demand is set one time within the month by the highest average 15-minute interval. You have a demand charge for the highest 15 minutes of off-peak demand met and also the highest 15 minutes of on-peak demand met. Peak demand can represent a large portion of your utility bill if you choose to water during the peak times. However, if you set your highest demand in the peak one time within the month, You can water in the peak times for the rest of the month without additional penalty. Make sure your motor is the correct size for your pump. An oversized motor can result in unnecessary higher demand. It is also possible that a newer, more efficient pump and motor combination may be available that would save on demand and energy usage. Make sure your pump and motor combination are the correct size for your system. If you're using a 75 horsepower pump when a 50 horsepower pump would be sufficient, you are wasting 25 horsepower or 18.7 kilowatts of demand. Make sure that worn pumps, motors, nozzles, and leaks are not increasing flow to the point where demand has increased. Be aware that your pivot drive and end gun booster pumps will increase your demand kilowatts. We hope this video helped explain the irrigation rate and the opportunity to save by avoiding peak times. Thank you for being a valued member. We are grateful to serve you and meet your electricity needs. If you have questions, please do not hesitate to contact us.